not often, there has been the selective application of this act. At one point, the Law Association of Zambia did try to challenge the constitutionality of the Public Order Act. And the court found that there is nothing wrong with the provisions of the Act. The problem is purely implementation. And that is how the court found that the Public Order Act, in its current state, did not have any position that you could call to be unconstitutional. Allow me to speak to the Kanyama case. You know, Kanyama is an area in Lusaka which is highly classified as an economically vulnerable area, security charged area. Most of us, when we go to Soweto Market, that's located in Kanyama, you're on high alert. You have your belongings to your heart. If anyone pushes you in the market, you'll be wanting to check, do I have my phone, do I have my money intact? When we talk of other offenses, drug-related offenses, we've always heard reports that the combined forces of law enforcement agencies, when they do raids, one of the most areas that would be reported a raid was done would be in Kanyama. When you're going to talk of serious offenses, aggravated robberies, murders, when we hear of reports that the police did make arrests, you find that the highlights were in that location. So Kanyama has this tense situation or atmosphere about it that is outside of elections. So now when it came to elections, this was an area in Zambia or in Lusaka that was so politically charged. It was very tense. And on the 30th day of July 2021, we saw the report of two alleged political cadres under the then ruling Patriotic Front that were murdered after a clash with the opposition political cadres. When you look at this, Kanyama, as I have said, it has social, economic precarity, and political mobilization is a place where political actors will take advantage of the precarious conditions that prevail in such an area. And we see they'll mobilize people to do that. When we find the people who clash, these are people who, in an everyday life, they live in the same community, they know each other, they shop from the same places. If they go to the shop, to church, you find they belong to the same congregations. But when it comes to elections, they see each other as enemies. And this is what led to this unfortunate event of where two people got killed. You find that in such areas, foot soldiers will be mobilized. And the previous speakers spoke to how they'll be mobilized and given drugs, they'll be given alcohol, they'll be given small amounts of money, 20 kwacha, 50 kwacha, and once they are taken, they'll tell them to do anything as long as an instruction is given to them. It will happen. So such transactional mobilization performs in a political competition into the market for cohesion, and one that erodes the democratic norms. The other thing about Kanyama is the density of the people. It's highly densely populated. You find that the road network is poor. I don't know how many of us have been. I've been to Kanyama a few times during the legal aid clinics, and I'll always be asking, which direction are we going? Are we going one which is closer to the road, or are we going one which is inside? Because I always be thinking, if we're inside, how safe are we? But you find that the road network is not good. You also find that there is so much of informal housing arrangements, and this also poses a challenge sometimes where there is supposed to be rapid response from our officers. So these structural difficulties do not absolve the institutional obligations. Law enforcement agencies, where it is delayed, is perceived to be selective and sometimes a retaliation to the dynamics. When When this incident happened in Kanyama, we saw the Electoral Commission of Zambia suspending the elections, and the suspension was on up until we voted on the 12th of August. But while this fell between the ECZ's mandate to have regulation, it's purely administrative. There is very little that ECZ can do in terms of enforcement. Yesterday, Mr. Bob talked us through what ECZ's role is really limited to. So you'll find that the Commission will rely on our law enforcement agencies, mainly the police, and intelligence reports to ensure that the lives and the environment is safeguarded. And usually, the police will be perceived as partisan sometimes, and you'll find there will be retaliation when the police goes in certain areas because they'll be thinking they are siding with a particular political player. One thing the Kanyama incident underscores is the importance of swift and visible impartial prosecutions. Where there is a failure to prosecute these offenses, democracy bleeds silently. In this case, we saw that there were reports of some investigations, but it just faded in the public space. And up to now, we don't know what has happened, but for all we know, there was no prosecution, there was nothing. And so for me, what I'm saying is where justice is delayed in political violence, justice is not only denied to the victim, but to the rule of law itself. Talking about the Northwestern case of Mr. Jackson Bungo, this one was unfortunately killed on the voting day. It's a case that is all familiar to all of us that are seated here. It was an act of mob justice or mob violence at a polling station. And it arose from the fact that there was information that was carrying pre-marked ballot papers. There was no verification or veracity to the information, and we don't know where this information came from. But what did it give rise to? Vigilantism. You know, political parties will always say that you need to protect your vote. So they put people in places to ensure that go and protect your vote. They don't believe in the institutions. They don't believe in the systems. Because if they did, they can't be calling on members of the public to go and protect the vote. Because they would have known that the systems have adequate safeguards in place that ensure that every vote in this country is protected. So what does this incident illustrate? For me, it illustrates misinformation in electoral environments. There are rumors concerning ballot manipulation. There is they lack faith in the electoral process, in the ECZ. They don't believe the ECZ is adequate to secure the votes. Secondly, this incident exposed a weakness in intelligence-led policing and crowd control. The environment, as was said by our previous speaker in 2021, was actually very highly charged. I don't know how many of us here have ever monitored elections at any given point, because elections are a process leading to the voting date. So even the way delimitation is ongoing, this is actually part of the process for this year's election. I don't know how many of us have taken an interest to begin to monitor. I don't know how many of us here have gotten up to go to a political rally, not because you're a political player, not because you have a political preference, but just to monitor. When people say this is what happens at political rallies, have any of us taken the chance to go and ensure that this happens? We need to take an interest. How many of us have participated in the monitoring on the actual voting day? How it starts, what happens when voting closes, what happens, how are votes counted, how are they tallied, how do they move from the polling station to the collection points in the particular constituency, before it gets to the results center. There are all those processes. At one point in 2011, when I participated in the process, we were in Mandevo and we were told, you need to check that vehicle. It has carried ballot boxes and they are going to fill in new ballot papers. We all stood and started running. But this, at that point, I was an advocate. I know the process. I was trained. But to see that information was enough to trigger all of us to start chasing the car under the belief that there was going to be pre-marked ballot papers put in a ballot box. You have to know that there are seals that are put on ballot boxes. Those seals have serial numbers. Everyone inspects those seals. But this is what misinformation can do. It just doesn't mislead. Sometimes you have to think people who are not informed and the ones who are victims. But you find that even a person who's informed gets triggered by a process of misinformation and you start chasing ballot papers, or rather ballot boxes to go to the results center, which is not supposed to be the case. The other thing that this case reflected was the deeper social-political dynamics, which include regional polarization. This killing showed that colorism and retaliatory mobilization can actually overwhelm and take over the formal security arrangements that are put in place. So what are some of the lessons that we can learn from this? Before I can go to the lessons that we can learn from this, the outcome of this case and the Kanyama case is that we saw a prosecution actually, and we saw that 11 people were arrested, but only 2 got charged with murder, which was reduced to manslaughter after trial, and they were sentenced to 8 years imprisonment. But what about the 9 that were released? Is it that they were independent and had not participated in the mob, or was it that there was inadequate evidence against them and they were also participants in this crime? We'll never know. But what are some of the lessons that we can draw from these 2 cases? One of the things that we can learn is that socioeconomic vulnerability is usually a force multiplier for political mobilizations. Poverty is not a legal defense to criminality. However, it is used by most players to ensure that they take advantage. The second thing is colorism. It has already been referred to by the previous speakers, but what does colorism do? It presents a distortion of political parties. Political parties actually have a responsibility to ensure that democracy is sustained. But what we find most often is that political parties actually tolerate repressive capacity in the form of informal enforcers. I don't know if I'll be correct to call them militias, but they have these things, they are commanders. Even when you see the way they dress, they will tell you that we are in charge. And unless the 2 political players take a role and ensure that they do away with these informal enforcers, we will not see some of these cases not happening, because you find that the ones who perpetrate this are actually these informal enforcers that have actually been perpetrated by political players. And more so than often, these are the ones who didn't want to undermine law enforcement agencies when they come in to do their work. The other thing has been the perceived selective application of the Public Order Act. There will always be a cry from an opposition political party of how they are not being given fair play when it comes to public gatherings. So you find people who want to say, okay, if they don't allow us, we'll go anyway. And when they go in anyway, that's why you find that they clash. Because sometimes the lack of not permission, when police say they can't police because their security concerns, truly they could have actually received credible intelligence reports that actually there are security concerns. But when people don't believe in the system that we have in place, they'll think, oh, the police are just being selective. We'll go on our own in any event because they don't want to apply the Public Order Act effectively. The other thing is that we must strengthen the education on elections. Voters must understand the process, the procedures, the counting, Once we know these processes and we understand them, then it will take away this thing that actually the process is going to be manipulated and we need to rise up on our own and begin to safeguard our voice. And the other thing is that political leaders again should rise. They should ensure that they publicly condemn violence. They should ensure that they have internal disciplinary courts, and they should refuse to deploy into the system these commanders or these legal forces that they have. So, for the prosecutors, the lessons that can be learned from here is that there must be concrete prioritization of election-related offences during the period that we are in the elections. I know that the DPP, your office has got specialized units that are dealing with different crimes, different offences. Probably during election cycles, there could be an ad hoc unit that can specifically deal with this, since we run election cycles every 5 years unless there's a by-election. Also, the strengthening of collaboration with other investigative wings and agencies and cooperating partners to improve the evidence gathering, especially for crowd-based crimes and digital misinformation cases. I know Ms. Mumba yesterday was talking about how conviction will be successful based on strong cases. But the strength of the cases is not starting with themselves. It is starting from another office, the investigative wings. So when you collaborate with them and they bring evidence that is credible enough for you to present these strong cases, because sometimes they'll bring evidence that is not enough for you to actually take a matter for prosecution. So sometimes when you don't see a matter for prosecution, it's because you did not receive what was sufficient and credible enough for you to sustain the prosecution. And you make a decision that this is not a case that we can take to court. But the public will perceive it differently. The other thing is also prosecutorial transparency within public visible limits, so that the public confidence can continue to be reinforced. This is where there should be the highlighting of incidents, periodic updates. I know we receive periodic updates on the social websites for the NPA, and these updates should be made without prejudicing the proceedings or any institutional vigilance. And I know there's a lot of capacity building that has been going on, and so it should be continued so that there is building capacity on the electorals, the human rights standards. We are talking about children not so long ago, and so on and so forth. So my conclusion is that we did see the ultimate peaceful transfer of power in 2021, yet these two incidences will remain solemn reminders to us that democracy is in itself not self-executing. It is sustained by institutions that are willing to enforce the law impartially. Election violence is actually not inevitable. It only flourishes in our environment where poverty is being intersected with political identity and where institutions are mistrusted, like I said, and where impunity is perceived. It diminishes also where the law enforcement and prosecution are neutral, swift, and professional. So I will end with saying, are we going to allow the very violent few, because they are a few, are we going to allow the very violent few to dictate Zambia's democracy narrative? Or are we all going to stand up? Are we going to be united in upholding peace, accountability, and justice in these elections? The choice remains ours. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kauma. I'd like to invite the Chief State Advocate to the podium. I think before we invite the next speaker. IT is now for Mr. Shalfa Reddy.
He took the bullet point blank, left for dead in the hospital bed while the world moves on. But he refused to die, refused to disappear. When he finally stood in that courtroom, it wasn't just his testimony they heard, it was a survival. Every word, every skin, every breath, the evidence was clear. The truth was undeniable. And when the gravel fell, his attackers were sent away for 8 years behind bars with hard labor. A survivor who fought back the only way that matters, through justice. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Mushalwa Mushalwa.
Ngamwata haina
on our way, and they got up with us, and there was a standstill, and we treated them as visitors in our land. We thought that they were asking for us to show them the way. And to our surprise, they brought out some guns and they started shooting at us. And our and we also scampered in different directions, running away from the guns which were. So we wanted to go back to our leader so that we can check on him in case he was being hurt. And so we left our vehicles and we started looking for him. Unfortunately, those people were shooting at us, followed us. And others managed to run away because they got into the vehicles, but for some of us, we couldn't. And they started shooting at our bodies. And then we were stabbed with knives in our bodies. And we were beaten. And then we were tied and then held into the vehicles. And I'm still talking to you, I still have the bullets in my body. But what shocked me the most was the person who did that was a very senior member of government. Who was supposed to ensure our security that we live unto him. But he was the first one to take a gun and shoot. And then telling the youth to say, can you stop this person? And that was a sense of shock to us. And again, what surprised me the most was that my issue could not be taken to court because the officers, that the police officers, refused to take my case to court. But fortunately, from 2015 until 2025, that is when the matter was taken to court, and those people have been convicted. During that time, the part that was in government made it impossible for us to go to the police station or to seek medical attention. And so the political violence was so bad unto people. And because of political violence, it was difficult for people to freely go to election arenas. And the police officers were also given instructions not to be concerned with asking to take care of us. And police officers did not have power to do their duties. And when we asked them, we questioned them, we are told that they were following instructions. And even when we went to the hospital to very much that we received, that we suffered. People were scared just to go and vote. So I'm very grateful to all the departments that have ensured that my case finally went to court. I don't have a lot, I wish you well.
Before you stop, Mr. Shambra, how is your political involvement currently? I know one of the things you went through is when you went to report the case, you were actually locked up instead of being taken to the hospital. So how is your involvement in politics currently?
Training politics as it now. At that particular time, I was scared to go there. But now, when there is an opportunity, when there is peace that is prevailing, yes, I can still engage myself in politics.
Ladies and gentlemen, this session was put on the program just to show the direct impact of political violence. As you heard from Mr. Shampa, his political life was cut short. That, because of the efforts of investigators, the change in the political landscape, as well as a successful prosecution, he is now alive to participating in politics further, just underscoring the effects of political violence on participation in democratic life and processes in the country. So we thank you so much, Mr. Shampa, for taking time off your busy schedule. I know you are a farmer. This is cultivation season. You have to take care of your crops, but for a break to come and talk to us in this forum is very commendable. We thank you so much, and we wish you the very best in your future endeavors.
Thank you, Chief State, and thank you to the two presenters. Thank you for the lessons, Mr. Mshauka, that you've provided to us. Allow just two interventions, any issues on the right side, one, and one on the left side. The hand at the back there.
Good morning. Small size, my name. I just want to comment by the last point, Madam Kaoma. You ended by asking a question. Should we leave this cadalism or this violence to the few? The answer is no. But also we have to recognize that politicians have commercialized the politics in Zambia to such an extent that this time of the season where we are, even ministers now they are able to pick a call from a cadre for the failure that at one time they may not be adopted. So all these lessons which we are learning, at the end of the day, the problem is the politicians. So we can massage the truth here and there, but at the end of the day, it is still go to the politician. So if we can have a situation where we can indeed engage these politicians to the extent that they understand these lessons. Like us, NPA, I think we are in this situation, we're at the end, far end, where we are just to prosecute. But the beginning of all these challenges are starting with the politician. And it's the politician who we should help to make our job so easy. I thank you.
Any typically look like you're itching to say something?
Nothing much, because everything has been captured. We are dealing with a very, very serious issue. The two cases that were highlighted in the presentation by the Vice Chairperson, Vice President of the last session of Zambia, and how the matters were prosecuted or not prosecuted, those are serious lessons learned. In the earlier presentation regarding children, again, that's a very, very serious issue. We do not have instances or cases, clear cases, where the individuals that were manipulating children were prosecuted. I'm very familiar with the Mishawa case, because I had to prosecute the case in its early stages. It's a sad case. But he's still living with a bullet in his body. How many years now, Chief said? This is how many years? Almost 11 years. And we're now talking about a full cabinet minister that perpetrated this violence. These are very serious issues. The lessons that we should draw going forward is something that was indicated. I want to quote it the way I took it down. Now I can't find it. But swift response, rapid response, swift prosecutions. When we have this perpetration of violence. So only to say, Mr. Michel, that we thank God that you're alive, and we hope that you can be a champion going forward to speak around this issue of ensuring that we avoid electoral violence, especially because you're in the political space. So this is not a matter of theory, this is a practical example of a living person that can champion this cause. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, GPP. That marks the close of our session. I wish to thank the two speakers for the wonderful work that they provided to us. We give you another round of applause.
Those black ones.
Up to here?
Yeah.
Oh.
Testing, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2.
Yeah.
It was an late guy.
Yeah, don't let me go pass her.
You